Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct tonight from Black Facts Headquarters Central with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Oh, and I see I messed up something again tonight. Well, wouldn't be the first time now, would it? I tell you, it's hard to keep track of all the little buttons on this thing you got to press to get this thing just right. Well, at any rate, hopefully everything's being recorded and you're hearing me just fine. And if not, wait for the rewind because I'll be posting some stuff up later. Hopefully you'll be able to hear that fine. Meanwhile, go ahead, give us a like if you're watching on Facebook. If you're on the tube, give us a thumbs up. Then go ahead and spread the word far and wide. Let everybody know we're over here and we could use some help. Hello. Send in the troops. We're trying to tell the stories we know. We're trying to tell some new stories that we don't know, and we're trying to share them with everybody that we know and some people that we don't know as well. And hopefully you're one of those in either one of those categories. Now, this is our last night for our segment, our month-long segment on black scientists, healers, and inventors. So it seemed to be only be fitting that we end with a Mancala tidbit. We'll call this a tidbit. And this one talks about the game. Again, just in case you're just now tuning in, maybe you're one of those latecomers, late to the game, and kind of lame, don't know about the game. This is the game right here. This is what the game board looks like. World's oldest game, or game board game rather. World's oldest board game. And in India, in Tamil Nadu, they call this game, one of the names they call it is Palanguzi. And Pal in Tamil means many, and Guzi means pit. And literally you could translate it as a, let's see here, if I can see all the writing there. Literally you could translate it as meaning pits. A fitting description of Mancala boards used to play the many Mancala games played all over the world. Palanguzi plays an important role in Tamil literature, of which we have some examples. We've given some examples already. There's even a film about women poets called Xxviii, S-H-E-W, capital W-R-I-T-E, Xxviii, which has a famous Palanguzi scene in it. The game is popular among children and older people, and it is encouraged for children to learn to count and to improve their hand-eye coordination while playing the game. Very good game. It helps expand the mind, and it's sure to turn any half-wit or nitwit into a whole brain person, someone that can use both hemispheres equally as well. They can do what with the right hand, what they can do with the left hand, or they can do with the left hand what they can do with the right hand. In other words, able to use the their full mental capacity. And that, my friends, is a rare ability for sure. Only because we're just not, most of us are not taught that way. Now, tonight we're going to finish up with reading some more about the life of Biddy Mason from the book With Open Hands. And so we're going to read a little bit more about her life. We're about halfway through this book, and we're just starting to get to the good part of her life. So we'll try to sum it up for you real quick. even if we don't get to read every last word in the book. We'll try to sum up the rest of her story for you before we finish tonight. So let's go ahead and get jiggy with it because it's about time. It's about time. Here we go. Boom. There we go. World's oldest board game is what you're seeing depicted on the screen right now if you're watching with us on YouTube. World's oldest board game. Okay. Excuse me. Woo-wee. So here we go. Chapter 4. To California and freedom. They were going to move 800 miles to California. Almost 800 miles to California. 400 Mormons, including Robert M. Smith, were to start a new Mormon settlement close to the little village of Los Angeles, or Los Angeles as we call it, or some people say Los Angeles. There they would plant crops and moral values. The Smith family, their slaves, and all their animals left Salt Lake City in March 1851. They joined a train of that's odd. Won't show that one. They joined a long train of 150 wagons headed south toward Los Angeles. Biddy walked behind the Smiths' wagons just like she did walking from Mississippi to Utah, herding the animals. But this time she didn't have to carry Harriet because Harriet was about 10 years old. No, excuse me. Harriet was 3 years old. Harriet was 3 years old, and they're going to take this 3-year-old on a walk, an 800-mile walk. Think about that. Anne was 7 years old, and Ellen was a teenager of 13. At first, the trip was easy. So many men had rushed to the California gold fields in 1849 that the trail was well marked with good places to camp. All went well for almost 200 miles. Then Biddy saw the wagons in front heading straight into the mountains. And into a wide, heading straight, where did I say? Heading straight into the mountains. They climbed up, down, and up again. Days later, the wagons bounced down the mountains and creaked into a river valley. The wagons crawled up more mountains and across a desert. They crossed into California and another desert. They kept moving all night, trying to reach water. Some of the oxen couldn't pull any longer. Some were too weak to stand. Biddy tried not to watch as the men shot animals that had walked obediently all the way from Utah. The wagon train left the Mojave Desert behind at last and trudged up into the San Gabriel Mountains. Finally, on an evening in early June, the wagons rumbled down out of the mountains and into a wide valley. Biddy caught her breath at its gentle beauty. The valley stretched out far in the distance with vineyards and fruit trees. Great herds of cattle and horses grazed. On the soft green hills, the wagon train stopped. This would be Biddy's new home. Biddy, at age 33, and her daughters settled into life in the new log cabin town of San Bernardino. Here, the Mormons and their slaves raised corn, wheat, vegetables, and chickens. Rebecca Smith was still sickly, and now she had 6 children. Biddy helped run the Smith household, care for the Smith children, and fetch and carry for Mrs. Smith. It was much more pleasant to be a pampered, quote-unquote, house slave. as Biddy said she was, than a mule driver. It was much easier than walking miles every day in a dust cloud or a rainstorm. It was much better than climbing mountains or slipping and crashing down stony trails. Most of Biddy's days were filled by other people's needs, but on Sundays, when she had some time for herself, Biddy probably took her daughters with her to explore the hills around San Bernardino. She found new plants and herbs to use in making medicines. She showed her daughters how to choose just the right plants, as her slave teachers back in Mississippi had shown her. It might be on those walks that Biddy thought about freedom. During the journey from Utah, she had met two black people in the wagon train who were not slaves. Elizabeth and Charles Rowan were free blacks going to California because they wanted to. Elizabeth had been freed by her Mormon master, and she had met and married Charles in Utah. It was possible, Biddy realized, to be black and not be a slave. By 1855, Biddy was beginning to think more about being free. She talked about freedom with her daughters, Ellen, age 17, Anne, age 11, and Harriet, age 7. She talked with Hannah, with other slaves, and with people who were already free. What would it mean, Biddy wondered? Where would they go? But she waited and thought some more. Biddy had met several black people in San Bernardino and Los Angeles who were not slaves. She met Robert Owens, a wealthy black businessman and property owner, and his wife, Winnie. She learned that California was not a slave state. It had been admitted to the Union as a free state in 1850. 2 years before that, California had been part of Mexico, so people were confused sometimes about the rules. Sometimes it seemed the Mexican law, military law, and California law were all in force at the very same time. But there was no doubt about one thing: California was not a slave state. Robert Smith was worried. He had assumed things would stay as they always had, but he knew that Biddy knew, and she was in a free state, and that she was talking about it with the other slaves. At the end of 1855, he made plans to take his family and slaves to Texas, a slave state. In Texas, there wouldn't be any foolish talk of slaves leaving their master. Meanwhile, Biddy's daughter Ellen and Robert Owens' son Charles had fallen in love. When Charles heard that Mr. Smith was planning to leave California, taking Ellen away, he told his father. At the same time, Biddy herself told Robert Owens and Elizabeth Rowan about Smith's plan. She feared the trip to Texas. She said even though Mr. Smith promised she'd always be well treated. For 19 years, Biddy had obeyed her master. She had walked behind his wagons for thousands of miles, from Mississippi to Salt Lake City to San Bernardino, but Biddy knew she wasn't going to take nary one more step toward Texas. Not going to happen. She would not leave California. But Biddy also knew that, knowing that Biddy knew that she and her daughters could stay there and be free, but she also knew that it was possible that he could run off with her daughters and leave her there by herself. Mr. Owens and Mrs. Rowan went straight to the LA County Sheriff. They told him that Smith was planning to take slaves out of California. In fact, Smith was already camped in the Santa Monica Mountains with his family and his 14 slaves on their way to Texas. The sheriff rode to Smith's camp. He accused Smith of trying to persuade, quote-unquote, persons of color to go out of the state of California. He took Biddy, Hannah, and their children to the county jail for their protection. Biddy feared what Mr. Smith might do next. He would have to go to court to get his slaves back. In January, Judge Benjamin Hayes heard the case in the LA County Courthouse. In court, Mr. Smith told Judge Hayes that Biddy and Hannah had agreed to leave Mississippi with him, but they were not slaves. That they were not slaves, but members of his family, and that he kept them in no greater control than his own children. Some of this was true, since the slave children probably were his children. Smith said that Hannah was well disposed to stay with him and that this was all Biddy's idea. Judge Hayes considered Biddy the leader of the group, but under California law, she was not permitted to speak in court because she was black. In the judge's office where Biddy was allowed to speak, she said, "I have always done what I've been told to do." She said she feared the trip to Texas, even though Mr. Smith had told her she would be just as free in Texas as she was here. But mind you, he was holding her as a slave in California, so what's that all mean? Judge Hayes knew they would not be free at all. He thought the only reason Smith wanted to take 14 slaves, Biddy and her 3 girls, Hannah and her 9 children and grandchildren, to Texas was to sell them. He thought that Biddy feared the trip because she knew she would again be a slave. Now, Mr. Smith was even more worried. He bribed the court lawyer who spoke for the slaves, giving him $100 to quit the case. Judge Hayes found out about the bribe. At the same time, he decided that Biddy and the other slaves wanted to stay in California, but they were afraid to stand up to Mr. Smith. On January 21st, 1856, Judge Hayes ruled that all the said persons of color are entitled to their freedom and are hereby and forevermore free. The former slaves, he said, should go to work for themselves in peace and without fear. Then he ordered Mr. Smith to pay all the court costs. This was too much for Mr. Smith. He fled California without his slaves and without paying the costs. Hannah took the last name Smith and returned to San Bernardino. Biddy did exactly what Judge Hayes said to do. She went to work for herself in peace and without fear. But first, she needed a last name of her own and a place to stay. She took the name Mason, perhaps from one of the Mormon trailblazers, and for the rest of her life was Biddy Mason. Then she accepted Robert Owen's offer to stay with his family in Los Angeles. She had 3 daughters to care for. She did not have one penny, but she had a plan. And that's what she put in motion at that point, was her plan. In the end, Biddy ended up being one of the first millionaires in Southern California. She also ended up owning a good portion of what is now downtown Los Angeles, some of the most valuable real estate on the planet Earth, period, dot. So if you go to Los Angeles, you can find a plaque with recognizing the fact that Biddy Mason used to live on that particular block. I'm not sure where the plaque is, but it's somewhere right downtown. I just can't remember the exact cross streets or the address or anything, but I know I've read about it before and I know it's down there. So that's something you'll have to look for. Oh, here it is here. On March 27, 1988, Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley, 3,000 members of the Fame Church, and members of Biddy Mason's family placed an impressive tombstone over her grave. And on November 16, 1989, a Biddy Mason memorial wall was unveiled on the site of her former homestead on 3rd and Spring Streets. Oh, wait a minute. I used to live on 3rd. Wait a minute. Did I live at 3rd and Spring? No, I don't think I lived at 3rd and Spring. I lived on another street, but real close to there, though. In downtown LA, the city declared this day to be Biddy Mason Day in Los Angeles. Biddy Mason gave with open hands and an open heart to any person in need. Her life is a gift to us all. So that's the gift we get here in the present from Biddy Mason in the past. So the past is important because the past is prologue the past does point the way toward the future. So never forget your past. Never forget who you're from, where you're from, and always, always keep your hands open when you pray. I never pray like this. See, if you pray like this and your blessings were to drop out the sky, guess what? You can't catch it because you got your hands closed. Open your hands up and you pray with your open hands like this. That way, if some blessings fall from the sky, you got your hands in the right position to catch those blessings. There you go. Lesson for you today from Doc Ock here at noon and 9. We're closing out. All you children out there know what to do. Don't make me have to give you a quiz because you're already a whiz. Whether I give you a quiz or not, you know your biz. And right now, your biz is to take your little head, lay it on your little pillow, on your little bed, close those your eyes and wait on that sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, you'll know that it's time for you to rise and shine, oh chillin' of mine. In the meantime, peace be with you all with justice, because peace without justice disgusts us. And all you adults out there, please don't forget to go ahead and give us a like on Facebook, a thumbs up on YouTube, and then subscribe to our Black Facts, Tubular Black Facts channel if you haven't already. Until tomorrow, we'll see you then. And I'll just say, Tuta Nana to L.A. Shakur, and where'd Brother Solomon go over there? He was over there a minute ago. And Solomon, there you go. Peace out without a doubt, y'all.